I'm wondering. Good morning. I'm wondering, is that... Yeah. Hi, good morning. Do you hear me and do you see the screen? Yes. Hi, Diego. Do you see? Good morning, Max. Diego, do you see the screen? Or do you hear me? I have a feeling something's weird. Hold a second. No. Okay. Hello, hello. Um, Hello. Do you hear me? If you hear me, can you take comments? I'm just something not really right. Good morning. Zoom back a bit. Okay, good morning, everyone. We can hear coffee. Okay, so, but how about, is it perfect? Okay. I don't know, somehow. I don't know if it's working or not.
Oh.
Robert said I hear you fine. So this is my problem. Vasco, hi. Do you hear my voice? You should go, please.
Okay.
Harry, good morning. All good? Pictures good here.
すいません。はいじゃ
Okay,
No,
so but
I need to.
simply I can't hear.
Oh God,
Only I can't hear
that's terrible.
myself. Go.
I should go,
Yes.
even though you can't hear.
We hear everything. Max said is we hear everything. Uh-oh.
I know that's very dangerous. We should
Okay,
not
so it
hear
seems
everything.
like working. Soho, good morning. Yeah, Sarah, good morning. So seems working, but this one doesn't work.
Use another.
Yeah, earphone. Yeah, go ahead.
Earphone.
Yeah, you can start.
Okay, 1 second. I have to do this. May I actually start?
Yeah.
Well, if everyone is here, actually.
Yeah. Maybe.
Hopefully, of course, I'm never ready when I'm supposed to start, but I will start anyway. And hello, everyone. Here we are again. This is, 'almost exactly a year since the beginning of this. This is very crazy and in its own way very depressing. But in another way, the fact that in a certain sense we can be together in this format and in other online formats is something that we should try to preserve for the future as well, so that even if we can actually get together, we can still be together when we're not together. Okay, well, does that sort of make sense? Perhaps. So, I still have a rant, and I keep wanting to have a smaller rant, but anyway, the rant seems to always proliferate because there's a lot of things to talk about, and I want to, or I should say, I think it's important now that so much time has gone by that we in fact add a little levity, so it's not always total depression. Okay. Well, first for the depressing news, which is although there's
I tell you what, microphone is not working.
Oh.
Sorry.
Maybe this should go up also. How about now?
Yes, say again.
Hello?
Talk.
Yeah, I'm talking. Should I talk for real or not for real?
Go
Or
ahead.
just go test. Is it actually working?
Now.
You think so? You want to unplug it and see if it's the same?
This is working now.
Yeah.
Max says way better.
Okay. Oh, way better. Then that's great. If it's way better, I'm so happy about that. It's always nice to be way better. That's really true. Okay. So there's a lot of good news about the rollout of the vaccines. Johnson & Johnson's vaccine in the United States has been approved and will be approved and used in other countries as well. So that's one more. The Cuban vaccines are still in third stage testing, I believe, but one of them at least will probably be ready for the distribution worldwide rather soon. However, the variants of this virus, which have been appearing recently, are in any case troubling. And most recently, at least what I read, and I'm sure that my information is out of date, there's a variant B1.526, which I don't know if it comes from New York or if it's particularly prevalent in New York, but it's in the United States, in New York and or in the East Coast. And although it's related to the variant B1.531, which actually was first identified in South Africa, this variant 1.526 has a mutation which in fact makes it less susceptible to being eradicated by our immune system after we have a vaccine. 1 second, sorry, I have to do this because my iPad, which I so rely on now for so much, I'm not sure that's good. Here we go, is closing down on me. There, I do that, and hopefully everything will be now okay. Yes. So this variant 1.526 is similar to the variant which is found in Brazil, apparently. P1 it's called. That's first identified in Brazil. And that those variants are actually less susceptible not only to the vaccines at the moment, but also to antibody treatments. So this is a bit of a problem. This apparently, for those of you, well, those of you who are actually interested probably know more than I do, actually. But for those of you who are mildly interested, at least, the area of change is one protein called E484K. Okay, remember that if you can. E484K. And that particular mutation weakens the body's immune response to the virus. So this is the problem, E484K at the moment. So what we have now, we do have vaccines coming out, and the companies making the vaccines are actually madly trying to modify them, have booster shots ready or possible to deal with these variants. But now, oh gosh, I have so much about variants here, there's no way I can talk about them, but I want to talk about this, what is called so-called herd immunity. And many people and people in government and people in many countries are saying that, well, now that we have the vaccines, we're going to have herd immunity very soon. It seems like we are, I don't know, herds of cattle or something. Perhaps we are, but I don't know if this is somehow not respecting cattle enough. In any case, the biggest problem that we have is that countries now are trying to protect their supplies of the vaccine, because even though things are opening up and more vaccines being produced, it's still not enough. And there are poorer countries which have not been able to actually secure adequate supplies, will become, I could say, laboratories for the mutation of the virus. So if you do not have a sizable proportion of the population vaccinated, actually, there is larger chance that there will be more mutations. And these mutations can go either way, of course. They can be benign, they can be actually beneficial because they will perhaps lessen the virulence of the disease, or they can be like this E484K mutation, very serious. So what is most important for countries which actually have the wherewithal and have the resources is to make sure that the vaccine is very widely available. Of course, this is for a while, both Russia and China have been, and India, have been distributing their vaccines in countries which cannot afford them. And that has been called imperialism, blah, 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 but it's actually only very good sense, and it's something that the United States has at least committed to doing, but in fact I don't believe is doing yet. So this is most important. And this is here. This was just yesterday. do I have this or do I not have this? I think that this is not good. Oh yeah, oops, I did it. I made a mistake. I was too soon here. Yes. Yeah. There was, opinion, CNN Business, actually it wasn't yesterday, but it was a week ago. Sorry, I read about it yesterday. Had an opinion column where they urged actually the United States to begin supporting countries which cannot afford the vaccine, because as it says here, permitting the spread of the virus in countries without the means to acquire vaccines could allow more variants to emerge, against which current vaccines would prove to be less effective or not effective at all. This is what I said, and this is what this opinion piece and others are. That's, as they say, Russia is using its vaccine capability as a form of healthcare diplomacy. Well, that's better than healthcare imperialism, which I've read about also. But we need to have the world diplomacy involved. This is something that everybody in the world has to participate in. Otherwise, we will not conquer this virus. So I continue with my rant, and I continue with depressing news still. I'm sorry, but there unfortunately this week, despite the bit of optimistic news, there's been a lot of depressing news. And one is that governors in the United States, and I still emphasize what's happening in the United States, and if I look in the world, look to Myanmar, for instance, it's also very depressing. That's in Africa, a resurgence of banditry, and in Nigeria, the kidnapping of girls from schools is also on the uptake and is tremendously depressing as well. So, back to the United States, and governors in 4 states, this is Mississippi, Texas, Montana, and Iowa, have been urging their residents to get back to normal life without masks, with sort of virus carefree life. So that Greg Abbott, who's the governor of Texas, who just a little while ago pleaded with the federal government asking for help because of the devastation due to the freezing weather and the fact that Texas never had an adequate electrical grid, or even sort of gas grid, I should say. But despite that, he said he was moving to open Texas 100% and would issue an executive order that would take effect March 10th, rescinding most of the early orders and suggestions regarding social distancing and wearing masks, etc., etc. And of course, what we saw even in Europe just very recently is a premature opening of economies, of the societies, can actually lead to pretty bad results. And this is something that people who are should I say knowledgeable, are very worried about. Now, our current President Biden, in addressing Texas and the opening, said that he's feels that this is kind of Neanderthal thinking, which was quite a pejorative perhaps, although I do think that maybe, and I will speak a little bit about Neanderthals in a little while today, that perhaps it's not quite fair to the Neanderthals, who perhaps were a little more aware than certain present-day people. Now, also in Mississippi, which is opening up, we find, or I find, I should say, and I'm just late with all of this, but it has not been present in the news particularly, is that there's a water crisis pretty much as severe as has been happening in Texas. And it's many areas of Mississippi are very poor, very rural, and potable water, drinkable water, is largely absent in many of these communities. So there are communities like Holmes County, Chula, Black Cooper, Claiborne counties, where they are on a boil water notice that they should not drink water just from the tap. And in Jackson, Mississippi, also not a very small city, also we have that. So Mississippi is opening up despite the fact that they actually have no water. Okay. How do I continue with all this depressing stuff? Now, skirmishes apparently between in stores, and I should mention though that in these states where the governors have been urging local communities to open up, there are local communities who have actually taken steps to maintain the safety precautions, and many of the stores and big chains, etc., have also done that. So things are a little bit more complicated and perhaps not as dire as they seem when I just read the headlines. But anyway, skirmishes inside stores have escalated recently. These are between people who don't want to wear masks or refuse to wear masks and officials, people who work at the stores who want to enforce store policy. And last week, in fact, during a skirmish with a security guard in a dollar store in Flint, Michigan. Flint is another place which has not had potable water, by the way. This security guard was shot and killed in a dispute over wearing a mask. This is nuts. Really, it's really nuts. Okay. Here we go. We continue. And I move on now. Please bear with me. I'm just getting this stuff off my chest in this apartment where I have a partner here, but actually nothing else aside from an iPhone. So I'm still kind of talking more or less to myself. And all of you are eavesdropping in a way on what I'm saying. I hope I don't put my feet in my mouth too deeply. Anyway, okay. At least you have the House of Representatives, for those of you who are not in the United States. Of course, we have these two branches of the legislature, two chambers in the legislative branch, which is the House of Representatives and the Senate. And this is true of most democracies, republics, which work under the parliamentary system as well. In any case, the House has approved, and that's simply because there is an actual Democratic majority in the House. So they've approved, and this is again simply by a complete party line vote, which means that Democrats voted for, the Republicans voted against, but since the Democrats are more, it actually passed. And this is the bill which is on HR1, or the American Rescue Plan, which, among other things, sort of streamlines voter registration in the United States. And this is also something that many people in different countries have no conception that it can be so difficult in the United States to actually vote in many places. It restores parts of the Voting Rights Act from 1965, which was actually what should I say? It was struck down, yes, by the Supreme Court in 2013 because of certain procedural issues. It curbs dark money in elections, which is basically, even money that's not dark is very dark in these elections, in the United States at least. And ends what's called gerrymandering. And gerrymandering is the drawing of districts to favor one party over another. So you have now in much of the country, and New York City as well, actually, these election districts. These are districts where people vote for their local representatives, let's say, and so let's say something is a form like this, and you'd have one election district would be some part here and some part over there with no even connection between them. And that, of course, is in a way kind of criminal redrawing of population centers, or I should say, or and that's at least been, if this bill passes the Senate, then this will be prohibited. However, of course, to get it through the Senate is something, which is the higher chamber of the legislative branch, is probably virtually impossible. As an attorney for the Republican Party, I just wrote this down, in Arizona, mentioned on Tuesday, he said, a measure making it easier to vote puts us, that is Republicans, at a competitive disadvantage, as if we're not dealing with the will of people, but we're competing against two different groups of power, two different clans, two different whatever. It says, and he goes on to saying, it puts us at a competitive disadvantage relative to Democrats. And he says, politics is a zero-sum game. It's the difference between winning an election 50-49 and losing an election 51-50. And of course, the continuing, I should say, harping on this fake news about voter fraud and how the election was stolen by Trump and the Republicans, of course, gives energy to these measures to restrict things, and also to vote against anything that would make it easier to vote. So here's a little more. Yes, here. Now they say the Republican lawmakers, according to the Washington Post, find this bill as apocalyptic. And our former Vice President, Mike Pence, who has not been heard from particularly recently, and that's a good thing, emerged this week. And again, this is part of the Washington Post writing. Oh, come on. I'm so sorry. I thought I turned off the sound, but not completely. Maybe that was Pence calling me. That's possible. Of course not. Anyway, he wrote a piece in the Heritage Foundation's blog. The blog is called The Daily Signal, calling this measure, H.R. 1, unconstitutional and reckless and anti-democratic. In other words, to allow more people to vote is anti-democratic. To limit voting and to engineer voting so it favors one party, one you can call ideology over another, he says is unconstitutional. Now, how can someone actually write something like that? That's unbelievable. This is so kind of new speak if we go to George Orwell's 1984 classic. We've gone very far past 1984, and we haven't arrived there, but something like this, where you say war is peace, whatever, is very similar. This is all these kind of speech that is becoming more and more prevalent is tremendously dangerous. Okay, I continue. No, I have to do this. I'm very sorry. This keeps going and I have to do it. But now we have this stimulus that we say for the United States, $1.9 trillion, which seems like a lot of money, but when you divide it among the people, the number of people, it's not so much actually. And that was what was passed by the Senate was a vote to actually consider this bill, which had been passed by the House. And that vote was 51-50, with the Vice President, Kamala Harris, actually casting the vote which broke the tie. Because there is a tie in the Senate, this is the highest, where you have, of the 100 members, you have 50 Republicans and 50 Democrats. And now that it's passed for discussion, Republicans have vowed to slow the passage of the bill. And for instance, this Senator Ron Johnson, he insisted on having all 628 pages of the bill read aloud, which now Senate clerks are doing that at a very rapid clip, to a chamber, of course, that's you need at least one Republican and one Democratic senator to listen. So we have this chamber, and they're reading these things, and I don't know if they're reading them simultaneously, different chapters or not. I have no idea about that. But with just one of those, and then sort of they take turns coming in so that the procedure is cannot be faulted in a certain way. Now, after that, there will be up to 20 hours of debate of the bill, and then led by Johnson, who has had this as a kind of what should I say? Well, this is his big project is to sidetrack this bill, side rail this bill, I should say. I know what I should have said. It's a crusade of his, in fact. This is something. So he and other Republicans plan to offer hundreds of amendments to slow the bill down. Let's see what happens, but we hope that the bill will actually pass, and hopefully it will pass before March 14th, because at the moment you have this part of the bill which extends what are called unemployment benefits in the United States, and that's if you lose your job and you are searching for another job, you can apply for government assistance while you're searching, and those benefits run out March 14th. So hopefully that will be passed by that time. Okay, now this is and this is done despite the fact that close to 80% of the people in the United States support this bill, and around 60% of Republicans, people who say they're Republicans, support this bill. So, as I mentioned last week, what is the reason that these Republican lawmakers can actually vote and promote policies which are in fact unpopular among their own constituencies? And I do see this as a kind of conspiracy, I should say, even though I don't want to be someone who is promoting conspiracies necessarily, but it does seem that the only actual explanation can be that they want, in fact, the current administration, the Biden administration, to fail. They want to do everything they can do to prevent what the Biden administration wants to do to bring the country back on its feet, also to create measures which will allow the country safely to open up rather quickly. I shouldn't say very quickly. They want all of that to fail and hope that enough people have short memories that because it won't fail within the next month, but it will fail within the next half year or so. And we'll find ourselves still, perhaps even in the thick of the pandemic, because of premature opening, etc., etc. And that failure in that time will then lead to the Republicans coming back into office, which seems to be all that they're interested in. But there is something else involved as well. And that I want to speak about now. And this is something which is very important for us as musicians and for us all over the world, not only in the United States. And what that is what I've talked about a bit before, and that's the rise of what we call the gig economy. Gigs are part-time jobs. Or I can say it is the Uberizing of the world. This Uber, this car company, this car rideshare company, you can call it even, with this name which conjures up all sorts of awful memories for many people, I think, in the world. Anyway, it's very interesting as a company itself, because ever since it was founded, it has been bleeding money. Now, I just read here that in 12 years it has never made a profit and cannot ever explain how it will become profitable in the future. Oh, I should say, I get information, my information from this, from a wonderful site about economics called Naked Capitalism, which is, I think, a very important internet site, in fact. So, Uber's stock value, of course, has increased 90%, and that's despite the fact that it has never been profitable, never will. And that came after the news that in 2020 it had lost $6.7 billion. Now we can see that the disconnect between what is the stock market, which is so important somehow, and actually what is happening in the world. Now, the largest part of the stock run-up, and this is the most important thing, occurred in November. This is after the Uber and other companies, there's Silicon Valley companies especially, were dependent on these gig labor costs. These were basically very low labor costs because the people who they hire are called independent contractors. So the company like Uber is not responsible for the workers. They're not responsible for any kind of benefits for the workers, and they are not responsible for any kind of job security. And these companies spent over $200 million. Now, this is despite the loss of $6.7 billion of Uber alone. They spent the $200 million to overturn California legislation and court decisions which granted employee rights to rideshare and delivery drivers. In other words, to make them that they did not have to be independent contractors, but were employees of these companies. Now we see this incredible rise throughout many, many professions, many, many jobs, turning them into what we call gigs. In other words, part-time work where you offload any kind of responsibility to the workers, to the person who's in the profession, and you separate management, which then becomes a kind of not a management of a company, but a kind of switchboard, let's say, sort of just connecting people who have their own companies, which happen to be just themselves. This way, this is a terrible thing for the world, and I see it will end up with, in a way, a new kind of. I know, it's too much time. It's right, I know, but I have to get this off my back. Okay. You see, I lost my train of thought. Now, this is terrible. So, anyway, no, the gig economy, this is the most important thing that I can talk about, actually, for us as musicians in the world. This gig economy that is encroaching on so many professions, including ours, and we are especially vulnerable to it, of course, is something that can bring on what I call kind of a 21st century system of, as I would say, serfdom, but it's actually worse than that. And I will leave that for now and come back to it with a more detailed explanation of what I mean by 21st century serfdom in one of the following weeks of this live stream that we did. Okay, so I move on now, but not yet to music. But I still have. It's not. The time is not so late. What's the matter? Is that no? I know everyone is sort of chomping at the bit, saying, "What are you doing? What's the matter? Oh, you're talking about all this stuff, but I came here for some tips about music." Okay, I'll give tips in a little while. Yes, I won't forget the tips. But now I have to talk about cuttlefish, and not about how tasty they are, but how, in fact, that I talked about them a couple of weeks ago, but I just read now how they passed a new version of a particular test which is called the marshmallow test. And this is a test that was designed actually for human children. So, what is this test? This marshmallow test is also called the Stanford Marshmallow Experiment, and is very straightforward. Let's say a child is placed in a room with a marshmallow, and the child is then told that they can manage not to eat the marshmallow for 15 minutes. If they can, they will get a second one, and they'll be allowed to eat both. So the question is, can the child delay gratification because the child expects that there will be increased gratification in the future? And it turns out that cuttlefish manage this test very well.
What am I gonna do?
They don't do with
I hated marshmallow.
they don't do with marshmallows, but with shrimp. The poor shrimp. Yes. So apparently, I'm not going to read the details of this experiment, but it was quite clear that the cuttlefish understood actually that they can exert self-control and actually wait for the second shrimp rather than gobble up the first shrimp first and then not get the second shrimp. Now there's another article I read, and I will probably talk about this another time, okay? But it's that the octopus actually can feel emotional pain like people can. That's another thing. And now for my favorite bit. And this has to do with the blob. Or, as it's more appropriately, I shouldn't say perhaps less appropriately known as, but more officially known as the slime mold, which we think is a kind of disgusting thing, which I actually think is it's very I should say Homo sapien centered to think that way. They probably think we're disgusting. In any case, now this slime mold, this will go on display tomorrow, actually, at the Paris Zoological Park. And it's an exhibit to showcase the abilities of the slime mold. And the slime mold is fantastic organism. It's a remarkable organism. It's not a plant. It's not an animal. It's not a fungus. It's a different thing. And in fact, it doesn't have two sexes like most living organisms, but it has 720 sexes. Wow. I have to laugh. Now, the other thing is that it's both one organism, but it can split into different organisms, or in fact you can cut it into different organisms, and then it will come and fuse back into one. And this becomes kind of huge unicellular, not celery, of course. Yeah, I've just lost my ability to speak English. I think this social distancing, I've been having that effect on me. In any case, unicellular being is around 1 billion years old. This is quite something, and it thrives in forest floors and in the tree bark, and can sort of live forever as long as the surrounding weather is not too dry. It likes humidity levels that reach, of course, 80 to 100%, so it likes the rain, of course. And it says its only foes are light and drought. And it can hibernate for many years when it's threatened, or when the world is too dry, etc. I don't know, those of you old enough, or devotees of old classic movies, will probably remember this 1958 cult movie, which is called The Blob, and that's what this is taken from, of course. The name was taken from that. This is this alien life form, which we find is actually not alien at all in real life. Then it takes over a small town in Pennsylvania and wreaks havoc. But it's kind of a cute movie. I kind of remember it. I'm not sure I actually ever saw it, but I may have seen a trailer. That together with the what was it called? I even forgot the name of this movie. The something Attack of the Deadly Tomatoes or something like that. And I'm sure I'm totally off the wall now. But I wanted to just show you a little bit about this blob.
No.
It's okay. Because no, just a tiny bit. I'm gonna have my little bit more of my coffee before. Okay. Here, and what I want to do is this, because there's very stupid music always that they have. Okay, but just a little bit. Here we are. Let me see it. Yeah. Well, it turns out that this blob, this remarkable organism, can actually negotiate mazes in its effort to find food, for instance. So, despite its having no brain, no nervous system, it has a kind of intelligence. It's remarkable. Here we go. More.
Enough.
Look at there.
No,
There it is separate.
No.
Okay. Enough. Okay.
Yeah, no.
For those of you who somehow were intrigued by this,
No more.
yeah, there are an incredible number of mold video, not mold, I'm sorry, slime mold videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's really, it is great. Okay, I wanted to now, however, move just here. Hold it. I have to. Here I am. Just before I go on to music, just talk a little bit about the banjo. And the only reason for talking about it is that I found it
Banjo.
fascinating. Yes, the banjo, which is sort of a quintessentially American instrument, so called, and at the end of the 19th century gained incredible popularity, so much so that almost every household in the United States somehow owned a banjo. And the earliest films, music films, and I showed some of these clips much earlier in the pandemic, were of playing the banjo. And also the earliest sort of jazz recordings featured the banjo. That is. And not only that, Brahms himself was inspired by the banjo. This is all stuff that I spoke about before. And it is, had Brahms actually lived longer, he probably would have written more banjo-inspired passages. It had to do with the sort of ragtime rhythm, sort of 3 against 4, which he heard at a party when an American woman played the banjo there. This is very fascinating. But the banjo, of course, harked back centuries to Africa and to the Senegambian, that's Gambia and Senegal together. That's the instrument called the akonting here. And what people have found is that these instruments were not brought over by slaves, of course. They could not be, because the slaves were brought over in the absolute most horrendous conditions, just sort of chained, most often naked, in the bottom of the ships carrying them. And of course were not allowed to bring any kind of possessions. But the technology, the know-how for building these instruments, of course, came with these people who came over. And then the enslaved Africans who fashioned various variations, I should say, of the instruments in the fields of the Mississippi Delta in Louisiana, etc. And that began the evolution of the banjo. Oh, I have one more thing. I was thinking, this is, maybe I'll leave this for next time, but I'll sort of give you a little prelude to that after this. Sorry about that. I have this jumble of stuff here, which is many pages that I'd sort of clip out or write comments about, etc., etc., and then sort of figure out what should I talk about when. Anyway, I want to, I think I don't have it there, I want to just show this akonting, this instrument, which we still see. And let me see if I can get it here. No, this is wrong. Sorry about that. It's the wrong thing, but I have it here. I think. Yes, here goes. I'm sorry. I have to. I'm not finding it exactly. Yeah, here. Okay. That's what I need. Yeah. I have to. Somehow I lost it. Yeah. This is. It's wonderful. Here. This is just. Okay, that's just a little bit of this. There's more.
I think, I'm not sure.
What is that?
Because you didn't put the close to microphone.
Oh, shall I? Let me do this again.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Maybe it didn't show.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do this again.
Because you, maybe yes, because
Here.
only one was mine. No,
Here. Yeah, now it's coming on. Okay. Okay, so that's here. It's called the accounting. Is the instrument, or you can call it perhaps a gourd banjo, the gourd banjo. So it's made out of, you have a gourd, which is a vegetable, sort of dried vegetable, large one, and then fashioned a wooden kind of fingerboard here, and then the strings go to that. Now, another thing, if you listen carefully to that little clip there, you will see that the person who was actually singing and playing it was doing something in, what should I say, in something that had a 5 against 4 meter. So it seems so natural, but it's, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. It's against that. It's so natural, but very actually complicated and sophisticated. And that reminds me of going to a party in a Middle Eastern restaurant in New York when I was little. And seeing, there was a student of my father who was playing the clarinet, of course, and he was a teacher, and he taught at NYU at one time. And he was a student of his at NYU, and this student was Armenian, actually, and he was trying to play the second movement of the Hindemith Clarinet Sonata. He tried just the whole year, and I was little. I'd already played the piece, of course, though I was maybe 8 years old. And he was trying to play it. He couldn't. He just couldn't do it. He couldn't figure out the rhythm, whatever. And I went to this party. I'd say it was actually a marriage party, and in this Middle Eastern restaurant, and here he was with the band, and he was playing. They were playing kind of Balkan folk music, basically, and of course I didn't know too much about it, but I was listening to it. I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is great. And here he's playing. I was counting 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wow, I thought he's playing something in 13/8 time. And for him, that's no problem. But yet somehow 2/4 was a little bit difficult. So this is going back to this internal rhythm that we have. And this internal rhythm has a lot to do with what we are used to, in a way. And I'm not going to explain more about that now, because I want to go to music at the moment here. Okay. And I'm going to talk about here. Let me put this away. Yeah, I know, time flies, doesn't it? Yeah. Why? This annoys me so much that this is actually possible. Okay, sorry about that. It's actually somewhere. So, the times I talked about imagination, and I also talked about earlier specifics of rhythm in classical music and subtle variations of rhythm. Now these variations, of course, all also have to do with connections to folk music, just like we have connections to even in the U.S. there are pieces that connections to bluegrass music, and of course now since the 20th century the connections to jazz have influenced the rhythm and the rhythmic sense that people must have in classical music. But one thing very important in classical music is a kind of flexibility that we need to have to feel these different kinds of, I would say, rhythmic sources in a way. Because in classical music we play, first of all, many different kinds of music, and also, even in one piece, composers will distill sources from different, so let's say, folk traditions, could be, anyways, into their classical pieces. When I studied in the Soviet Union, this is back in the good old bad days, a long time ago, I was struck by the fact that all of the kind of music history and music theory was based on this notion that folk music, or as they would say, music of the people, whatever, is at the basis of classical music. And of course, they did that in a very didactic way, and in a way which was also, I'm very sorry. Let's get rid of this too. I usually take this out and I forgot. I'm sorry, I apologize. Here we are. Yes, I know. So, as I'm saying, so what? Now I lost my train of thought again. So what we need to do. Well, I was mentioning about the Soviet Union, yes, and it was used as a way of actually forcing, in a certain sense, a kind of standardization, because a lot of that what they did was not even sort of celebrating actual folk music, but sort of taking sort of folk music and chaining it to both, I would say, political ideology, and also to a very kind of Western harmonic basis. So it was not in sort of appreciating folk music per se, but early on in the Soviet Union and before that, you did have theorists such as Asafiev, a very interesting theorist. I talked about him a little bit earlier, and I promised to speak about him more later, and I haven't yet, and hopefully I will have time to do that. But Asafiev was someone who appreciated actual folk music, at least before he was, in a certain way, forced to conform to Soviet precepts. I don't say more about that now. But when I'm talking about classical music and imagination, it's the imagination which will allow us as classical musicians to become this kind of person, or to incorporate this kind of style, and it's in this imagination which gives music its power. And I mentioned in the little notice that I wrote about this, that I would speak a bit about when I think of imagination as more than just imagination. When we think of imagination as sort of imagining a scene, imagining this, that, and that's very important, I believe, despite all that's been written to the contrary, for musicians and musical development. But there is imagination that we can have in our bodies themselves, so that we have an imagination of feeling, and that imagination of feeling we translate into sound. This is a topic I've been sort of going back to from many different angles, and this is just another angle about this. But this is, in fact, imagination. And you can put words to this or not put words to this, but it's the feeling which actually involves the imagination. Now, perhaps I do just a little bit of playing. see if I have this instrument here, and because I want to play recordings for you all, because also listening to historical recordings can give also can lead to great imagination. That's it's a kind of this. I decided to use another ligature, and I have no idea why, but it's an old one of mine, and this sort of fits on this thing. But sometimes you just decide things. It's not so good, is it? Because it doesn't work. Let me try it this way. Okay, I think that I can do this. And I'm going to work. I was thinking, because now I'm becoming tongue-tied because I have too much imagination. So it's sort of overtaking myself. I'm becoming different entities now, but just like the slime mold. You can imagine the kind of imagination that slime mold must have. It's unbelievable. It can be very confusing if you have 720 sexes, all in one body.
Why can you count?
Look, I didn't make up that. I just read. I'm relating what I read, and I was thinking I need to do more research about that. And if any of you who are listening know or find out about how the 720 sexes were actually determined, I'd love to know, and we can use it. But it's amazing. Okay, so I go back up here, and but I still think I need this chair. Normally I've done things like this. I've sort of fallen onto the floor, etc., etc. And this kind of acting that I do, this sort of imagination there, that is to dramatize what you can feel inside when you're playing this way. And I'll use the cadenza from the Copland Concerto for this, I think. And a reason for that is simply that I've got a request about the Copland Concerto here. So I will start with, and just to do this cadenza, and hopefully I won't fall down flat and I'll be able to actually play it, because I haven't played this in years. But here we go. I did play this a lot, actually, at one time. So it comes in, and you have the orchestra, and you have this great chord, and this chord is very simple. Let me get rid of this, though. Which is typical. This is in C major. In fact, I'll even start here, but I better do this. And I need this so I wake up. Although it's a little bit premature for me to wake up in this cadenza. So I pretend this is part of imagination. And I go back. And then the orchestra is there. And the orchestra gradually fades away. I don't even need the other chair because I'm here. That's good. But then I sort of wake up and think, oh, I had a nice sleep. And then I look out the window and I see C major. Of course, for us it's D major, but C major. And I go, oh, I like that. Oh, yeah. Ooh, now I can get excited. Wow, that's amazing. And then I keep going. Oh, that was nice, but I think of something else. Because I want to dance. And then I think more though. That's okay, but maybe I do something. I think I don't do that. But I do something like that. Well, that sounds better, doesn't it? Yeah. And this gives me an idea. Ooh, yeah, okay. Great. But not so great, right? You see, I'm a little bit out of practice. But yeah, I'm getting there. Wow, now I'm on a roll. Wow! Oh, I missed it. This reed is no good. But I'll try anyway again. My C sharp doesn't work. Here we go. I think it's the ligature. This is not supposed to be part of this demonstration, by the way. Yeah, my reed's too soft. It's just too soft. That's a little better. And then sort of forget a little bit of those extra things there. But I hope that I'm giving you a kind of snapshot of how you can use imagination to create excitement and emotion in music, in a piece like this. And this is particularly a good example for me because this is a cadenza that he wrote. And in this cadenza, Copland was trying to, well, I would even say imitate a kind of improvisation. And this is a kind of transition going from this elegiacal, I can never pronounce that word. Even. You see, my English is totally ridiculous now. Okay, I can't wait for the end of this pandemic so I can actually start associating with people. and I can restore my English. Because I'm thinking in many different languages, but rarely in English. It's crazy. So, this transition should feel like you're sort of going from one kind of mood, which kind of starts, you know, that's okay, I'm not going to do more of that. We're going to one kind of mood, and then gradually moves into the other kind, which etc., etc. That going to there. Why didn't that C sharp work? This, you know, okay. See this reed?
No.
Here, I'm going to do it here. It does not deserve to exist.
Kawaii-so.
I know. Now I feel terrible.
Yeah, no.
Oh well. Which just goes to show you that even though perhaps revenge is sweet, we should somehow seek, actually show forgiveness. But maybe not to the reed. Okay. Now, how am I doing for time? Yes, I have a little bit of time left. I think. So I want to play for you some of these recordings. Here, let's. I have a little bit of time, but I forgot to actually put things together. That I wanted to play earlier for you. And I do want to do this periodically and perhaps more, because for me personally, even though I've had wonderful teachers, my most important teachers were just little snippets of music I heard most often from these historical recordings. So, the first thing, I'm going to go once again to Schnabel, and I need to do this here. I'll go this way, it should go. Now, why isn't this working? Is this not connected by any chance? Ah, no, now it is. Maybe there's something not quite right. Okay, so that is working. That is there. Okay, so let me just check to make sure this all works out. Sorry for the thing. this is the second of the Moment Musical of Schubert, played by Arthur Schnabel. And here. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Here we are. I probably will not play the whole thing, but maybe I should. that was the second of the musical moments, as we would say in English, of Schubert, played by Arthur Schnabel. And you can notice how he is hearing how the sound develops in the piano and how his rhythm comes very much from that, this way. And something like this, to listen carefully to, gives you more information than probably a year's worth of lessons. This is the thing. It's just, this is the point with artistic endeavor, that what is important is a kind of epiphany. Let's say, this is. And of course there's all sorts of other technical things, blah, 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 but it's that epiphany. This is how, in music, this is how I think with my body, to create this kind of phrase this way. Okay, I will we'll keep with these kinds of recordings. I want to have 2 more recordings though, and I go now to Richard Strauss. This is Ein Heldenleben, with the remarkable recording of Felix Mengelberg and the New York Philharmonic in 1928. And this is the end of the piece. There's throughout. This is by far as I think, the definitive and the most remarkable recording of this piece. And is also incredible playing by the orchestra. Incredible freedom of playing by the orchestra as well. That's something that Mengelberg was able to encourage in a way. That's here. So I hope this is right. I have to check to make sure that this is. Okay, here's the end. It's a remarkable performance, 1928. And of course, Mengelberg was the closest conductor to Strauss as he was to Mahler. And it is dedicated to him. But just to hear the expanse of the orchestral phrasing in this, again, is a greater lesson than you probably get in several years of it. So you just need to feel what is in here, okay? One more. I have to do this because I just have to do this. And this is one of the most remarkable performances of all time. And this is, I'll just play the first two or maybe the maximum three parts of Dichterliebe of Schumann with Gerard Souzet and Alfred Cortot. Cortot recorded this commercially with Charles Panzera, who was a brilliant, wonderful singer, and that is in itself is a remarkable recording. But this recording, which was never released somehow, is I think, again, it's this kind of thing will influence as a musician you for life. So here we are. I'm sorry, let's do this from the very beginning.
Die Rose, die Liebe, die Taube, die Sonne, die Liebigkeit, alle Liebesbond. Ich lieb sie nicht mehr, ich liebe alleine die Kleine, die Feine, die Reine, die Meine. Sie selber aller Liebe wonne, ist Rose und Lilie und Taube und Sonne. Ich liebe alleine die Kleine, die Feine, die Reine, die eine, die eine. so muss ich weinen
Okay. I think we unfortunately must end this before we should. So, with that little bit of this remarkable performance, I say goodbye to you all until next week, and let's hope for less depressing world news than we have today. Take care.